Hey everyone, welcome to another video in this mini series where we are creating a WhatsApp-like group chat, and we are creating this group chat building on the foundation of our existing chat app that we have created in the previous series, creating a chat app in Flutter the right way. And in this video we will pick up from where we left off as we continue to refactor and to build out the necessary features to get our group chat working. And so I'll continue from our previous video where we said that we would start refactoring our view models, and that's the first place I will start. And I will start with the base view model here. And what I want to do here is that instead of creating a new chat using the new chat method, I'm going to create a chat using the model itself. And this chat I want to be going to give the message ID for the chat ID rather. And I also want to set the chat type. I want this to be an individual type, and for the members of that chat it should only be the members ID. This here should be an array and an array of maps, but there should be only one member. And so I'm gonna map the chat ID and map that to an empty string there, where the empty string, this map here, represents mapping the ID of each user who is a part of the group with a particular color that we will use to identify that user. But since this is not a group chat, we do not need the color here, so we only add the chat ID, which would be the ID of the individual person that we are having the conversation with. So this setup here is for individual chats and not for group chats. So we will move on, and inside of our create here we're just going to move the chat from there, and we will pass in the chat instead of a string. And there we have it. Now, if this is your first time, and I'm gonna make this method available, if this is you're just joining the video, this might somewhat seem strange to you, as like what's going on here, but I encourage you to go back, watch the previous videos, and you will get up to speed with what is happening. So I'm gonna call the create chat method, create new chat, and pass in the chat right there. And this should be inside of the if statement. So let's capture that. We'll create the new chat, and then we'll go ahead and add the message to the database. So we'll first create the chat, then we'll add the message to the database. And that's it for our base view model there. We'll go ahead and continue refactoring our view models. We'll bring up our chats view model and add some refactoring here. So what we want to do inside of our chats view model here, inside of our get chats method, instead of fetching a single user using the chat ID, what we want to go ahead is fetch the user based on a list of user IDs. So inside of our for each here, I am going to say, go ahead and get all the members of this particular chat that we are now processing. So we'll access the member ID list and we'll map that, and we'll fetch from it the ID of the user. And as if we remember, is that this is a map of, back if we go back to our base view, it's a map of the user ID and the color that's associated with that user ID. So inside of our chat's view model here, what we are saying is that for each map, we simply need the keys. So we go to keys first, and there's a single key, and this key would represent the user ID. So we are fetching all the IDs for each member of this chat. And then we want to go ahead and pass the IDs to our fetch method here, which is accepting a list of user IDs, and this will return a list of users that are currently online. And what we can go ahead and say, set the members of the chat to this list of users, so we know all the members in that chat or group chat that is online or active. And the next thing we want to do is inside of our received message here, which is called whenever we receive a message, I want to get the chat ID, and the chat ID is based on whether the message is a group message or not. So if the message has a group ID, so I'm going to say if there is no group ID, or if there is a group ID present, if it is not null, then go ahead and make the chat ID the group ID. Otherwise, if it is not a group message, then the chat ID should be the sender of that message, or the person from whom we are receiving that message. And so here, instead of setting this to from, as we previously did, we are going to set it to that chat ID that we have there. So that's it for our chat's view model, and we can do a similar thing for our chat view model. So if we open our chat view model now, we can do a similar thing for our received message here. So now we can go ahead and paste the same code, which is to determine the chat ID based on if it's a message group or if it's a group message or not. So we set the chat ID there, and a similar thing for our sent message. So when we receive a sent message event here, we'll say, okay, if it's a group ID, if it's a group message, then set it to the group ID. Otherwise, instead of from, set it to. Since this is a message that we have sent, now we want the ID to be to the person that we are sending the message to. And now we'll have our chat ID here instead of the to ID. So these are the basic changes to our view model to get that ready to go for group chat. Next, we will begin to refactor our UI now to reflect those changes. So inside of our pages, I will go to my home, and I want to refactor my home router here. So this router is responsible for showing the message thread screen, and I want to refactor this so that instead of sending one user to our message thread screen, we can send an array of users, so that will also capture a group chat scenario. So what I want to do is to change my interface here to, instead of one single user, to accept a list of users, and I'm gonna call the receivers. I also want to remove the chat ID here, and I will pass in a single chat. So let's pass in a chat instead of a chat ID. I also want to add another method here to capture the show group route, which is also part of our home screen. So let's go ahead and create that. And again, this will accept a list of active users and also the current user. Now, can go ahead here and bring in that one method. And for our widget function, again, instead of a single user, we want a list of users. We'll call them receivers, and also we want a single chat here. Similarly, we'll copy and paste this, and we'll do the same thing for our show or on show created group. So now we'll create this method show created group, and this method will accept a list of users, and in this case it will be the active users, also me or the current user, and that's it. Go ahead and require show group. Now for refactor this method to see a list of users, and I'll just go ahead and refactor all the methods here. So I've gone ahead and refactored those methods and created the show group on show created group method. But as you can see there, I'm calling a show Cupertino modal bottom sheet method, which doesn't exist because this is from a package that show a bottom sheet as a modal. So what I'm going to do is to go to my pubspec YAML file, and I'm just going to go ahead and paste that in, and that's the name of the package, which is show modal bottom sheet version 2. So let me go ahead and save that and install that package. So now that is installed, we can go ahead and import it here. Let me check that package. Seems to not be importing. So now we have it imported, and we call our show created group method there to show our group creation page or screen. So now what I'm going to do for the rest of the video, I'm just going to do this in a speed code fashion, since I'll be doing mostly just refactoring the UI itself. So let's go ahead and do that.